Fate Grand Order is host to a plethora of powerful characters, with over 400 being playable in the game. With such variety in units, it's unsurprising that some would be gapped in power level by others. With such an extensive cast of characters and over a decade under its belt, many of the units that may once have been good have been power crept out of the meta, and some just never existed in it at all. But what makes this worse is when it happens to a high rarity unit who is so much harder to get, being left by the wayside awaiting that sweet, sweet anniversary buff. So today I want to show off who I think are the worst 5-star units in their classes in FGO. Saber Astolfo will be our first of the worst. A meme servant drawn up due to a running gag, and given a kid as confusing as the man himself, Astolfo is a terrible unit. He is designed to be a servant that is supposed to be able to take advantage of crit damage, and very specifically crit damage on his buster cards, or rather, card. His kit is built around the very odd choice of having him do one singular explosive buster crit, and surviving long enough to make that happen. This is, both in practice and in performance, incredibly underwhelming. His NP is rather weak, but with a respectable 9 hits, his gains are middling at best, and the rest of his kit is incredibly lackluster. For being arguably the most recognizable figure in Fate, and yes, even more so than Saber, it's genuinely a shame that he isn't better. A good place to try and start to fix him would be if he could turn his entire deck into buster cards the same way that Saber can, but this goes against the entire design philosophy of Astolfo to make him terrible so it suits the lore. This one really hasn't changed since the previous time that I did this damn near 4 years ago. Orion, or rather Artemis, is simply awful. In almost no cases should your first instinct to be to bring Artemis to deal with a single target male boss enemy. That's what Uriel's for. Her kit is incredibly outdated, only just recently receiving a buff that does admittedly do wonders for her, but things like a 3-turn 20% attack up with a debuff resist is really bad, a singular turn of 100% anti-mail and a 5-turn cooldown is really bad, when that's something that should be on her NP instead, and her NP that applies some debuffs is really just kind of whatever. Her newest upgrade that gives her a 50% battery, 20% arts up, and a 34% crit damage on top of an evade is a step in the right direction, but ultimately not enough to convince me that she is ever worth bringing. Arjuna got lucky that someone at Lasagna has a hard-on for him, so they keep on buffing him. This next one was hard for me to decide because honestly there are only 3 Lancers that are kind of mid in my opinion. Brynhild, Tamamo Summer, and Bradamante. After consulting some people on their thoughts as well, we more or less determined that the worst of these is Brynhild. This one is truly tragic, given that she was, at one point, an absolute monster of a servant. She was useful as both a DPS and as a support, giving her Stargather buff to others. Genuinely, she was once incredible, but then she just kind of got left alone. As time's gone on, the game has ultimately changed. Getting the necessary crit stars to make a crit comp used to require a dedicated star generator. Jack, Cursed Arm, and Fuma all did this job well, and someone like Mozart was famous for his 50-star Star Bomb skill. But now, stars are basically free with just a few servants. Hell, even doing certain chains now makes a shit ton of stars. Tamamo Lancer's niche as a male boss killer still stands strong even if she herself is kind of just okay, and Bradamante, while weak, does offer something for her team in the form of buffs, cleanses, and batteries. The world grew beyond Brynhild, and so now she's just gonna sit here waiting for a buff. This is Klidge from the future correcting my Nemo pick because I remembered that this girl existed. Rider Artoria Alter Summer is more than just a mouthful of a name to say, she's also an awful unit. Her gimmick, if you can call it that, is that she gives a cooldown reduction buff to one ally, and that's kind of it. Otherwise, by modern standards, she doesn't even have the kit of a 4-star, it's closer to a modern 3-star. She has a charisma with a quick buff for the party, making her a rare early quick support, and a self-quick up as well. While her second skill also gives a good heal, realistically, it's just kind of mid in the modern context. Maid Alter used to be a pretty unique unit because CD reduction was rare, but now so many servants do this, genuinely just bring Ushiwakamaru, she's a better unit. This one really pains me to do. The worst caster is Nero. Bet some of y'all thought I was going to say Tamamo, didn't you? No, Summer Nero is a case much like Bryn. She was once an incredibly competent servant. Able to pump out good damage, having a targetable guts was incredible on her release, and the market hadn't become oversaturated by AoE buster casters yet. But while her contemporaries have received buffs that keep them relevant, the inferior extra heroine has been more or less left aside. The real tragedy is that she did get a buff, but it was to her NP that really didn't fix the problem with her. It gave her more damage and some very niche power mods, but ultimately it didn't fix the problems with her. There are arguments to be made that other characters like Ilya or Sanzo are worse, but them being single target at least gives them a niche that's actually useful. I thought maybe I would say Da Vinci as well, but her entire kit is really good, she just has a one-hit Noble Phantasm. Unfortunately, I think that Umu will have to keep waiting for a future buff that won't be coming for a long time. Onward and upwards, we have Semiramis, the caster disguised as an assassin who works poorly as both. She is kind of a mess of a servant, which is surprising because she has gotten 2 buffs in the past to try and fix her. Her niche is that she is an AoE buster assassin. Unheard of, I know. That is very tanky. This does not work in concept, nor does it work in practice. Her damage output is pretty low, her skills are relatively weak, save for a buster down and some poisoning if you're a freak like me that wants to Lacusta or Bishone max. She just doesn't do anything particularly well. I really wish I had more to say about her, but unfortunately she's just very lackluster. Honestly, the best way that they could make her somewhat viable is to take a page from Bishone and make the poison stacks have some kind of meaning, but until then she is just very simply kind of bad. Arguably, this next one is the hardest one to rate, given that quite honestly, the entire Berserker roster is pretty solid. Big damage all around for everyone, but someone's got to be the worst, and in my estimation, that someone is Zhang Yu. I'll add in that this may well be a tie with Nightingale, but I feel like she is ever so slightly more useful than Zhang Yu. The real problem with the Mechanical Centaur is that he is severely outclassed by others in his own niche. He is an AoE quick Berserker with no battery. His damage, while good, does rely on his crits for consistency, and while the current crit economy is good, to work at maximum capacity he has to have a Scotty or a Tiamat to function at all. In contrast, Lohi, who is also a standard pool servant, does less with crit damage but otherwise does everything that he does, but better. Zhang Yu is the epitome of the intimidating boss that's hard to fight but a lackluster unit once he joins your party. He's good, just not as good as the others. For the extra classes, because they are so vast and expansive, I have taken 2 from the Pseudo-knights and Pseudo-cavalry groups. Let's talk about them. For the first in the Pseudo-knights, we have Amakusa Shiro. Fitting that he and his girlfriend be at the bottom together. Amakusa has been completely reworked. Every single one of his skills and his Noble Phantasm have all been buffed. They have shown more love to this mediocre antagonist than some units that people actually like will ever see. And yet, he is just awful. His buffs make him a weird kind of off-support with Buster Down, NP generation, and Star generation, and his big claim to fame is an NP that removes buffs. Unfortunately, his kit is still very confused and middling. He rides the line of being okay at a lot of things and not very good at most. I've seen people defend him because of his NP, but even with his buffs to make it easier to get, it still isn't fast enough. I cannot think of any situation I would ever want to use Amakusa in when I have other options to choose from. Second in the Pseudo-knights, and potentially controversial, is Marie Antoinette Alter. This one really isn't that fair, and perhaps I'm letting some bias show. Marie will always have a place in my heart for being my first golden unit, and admittedly her Avenger form isn't bad necessarily. It's just that she fails miserably at what her kit is trying to achieve. She wants to be a tanky AoE arts farmer, but the problem is that her damage just doesn't cut it. In FGO, if you can counterclass, 99% of the time you want to be able to. To stand out as an extra class farmer, you have to have a gimmick that makes you worth taking over somebody else. For example, Arkowood has a 100% battery and a buff that makes her entire kit do more damage. She's easy to work with and does a decent amount of damage to farm effectively despite being a moon cancer. Marie is just very lackluster. Maybe with the release of Tokiko she can see a new life, but for now she's incredibly unimpressive. On to the Pseudo-cavalry, we have Okita Alter. Okitan is very similar to Amakusa. For whatever reason, the devs really like Okita Alter and have tried to keep her relevant into the modern day. Her entire kit has been buffed as well, save for her Noble Phantasm, which is a shame because her biggest issue is her Noble Phantasm. Her damage is bad, plain and simple. The exact same farm and talk about Marie applies here as well. She simply does not do enough to justify bringing her the moment that you have anyone who can properly counterclass. Knowing the love that she has gotten in the past, she is very likely to get the ever-coveted Noble Phantasm buff that makes her viable, considering that her whole kit is built around making her NP good, but until then she remains in the bad camp. And then finally, for the last servant on this list, we have Abigail Williams Summer. Poor Abby, one of my favorite servants. I am a staunch defender of her normal form, being better than it appears on paper, but the same cannot be said for her summer one. Summer Abby is an AoE buster foreigner who is meant to be a debuffer and possible DPS, but she's terrible at this. Her first skill is legitimately useless. It puts someone to sleep and it removes their buffs, which should instead say it removes one enemy's buffs and reduces their defense. The raw sleep ability is so bad because you're either going to kill the unit it's on the turn that you use it so it doesn't matter, or they wake up so it doesn't matter. There are cases where you sleep one enemy and attack another, but this is so counterintuitive to most fights. Her second skill, though, is amazing. Terror for everyone with a buster up for herself and a defense down. Then her third skill is just kind of fine. It's a battery and a buster down for one enemy with a debuff success rate up. Then her NP does damage to everyone, removes their defenses, and reduces their defense. The major problem with her is that she has a lot of trouble getting her NP, so it's basically irrelevant. She wants to be an off support of sorts, but is really just kind of awful at that as well. She's bad as a DPS, and she's bad as a support. The one place where she seems she could work is with a boss fight where you have to fight 2 units that can be debuffed easy. Other than that, there's not really a reason to ever use her. RIP Abby, surely your Santa form will be good. And that's it, my picks for the worst 5 stars. Let me know who you think is the worst one down below. If you want to support me directly, like, comment, and subscribe, or buy some Itasha coffee with my code klidge. I get all my research done by being overly caffeinated, and so I am happy to be partnered with Itasha Coffee. Support them, and you support me as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, but for now, keep your chin up. Peace.